So what we're going to move to now is getting familiar with finding our way around and using the repertory. We're actually going to do this over multiple sessions. I guess our goal here is to do one side of what we're doing is teach you the homeopathic repertory and what that's all about, and the other half is also teach you how to use the software that you're using at your set tech so you can do all this stuff by yourself. So I want to start by saying there's a whole heap of different functions we're going to be looking at, and we're not going to look at them all in this particular session. So for the moment, I'd encourage you just to focus on the things that we're going to cover right now, because the other stuff, you'll see a bunch of other buttons on your screen. We're going to cover them later on as we get into the context for them. So for the moment, let's just focus on the particular thing that we're paying attention to. So I've got the program open up in front of me, so you should see very much the same thing on your computer. This is kind of designed, I guess something I actually quite like about this program, it's designed to work or look similar to a web browser. So your experience of clicking your way around and finding your way through things, it's kind of designed to be a bit click and point and click, like it is when you're moving around on an internet program. So there's a couple of main sections. If you look in the top left hand corner of your screen, these first four buttons, there's a button for repertories, a button for references, a button for patients, and a button for remedies. And these are your your four main sections of the program, the four main types of data or bits of information that you're going to be working with. Repertories is what you can see directly below here at the moment in this table of contents area. You can see in our particular package that we're using, there's two repertories. There's one which is Berningshausen's Therapeutic Pocketbook, and there's Schroyen's Core Synthesis. So they're the two repertories that we use in this package. It's Core Synthesis, which is your set volume for this particular subject, and the Therapeutic Pocketbook you use in another subject later on, so we're not going to look at that one at all in this particular subject. We're going to focus entirely on Core Synthesis. And so if you click on Repertories, that always opens up this table of contents, and you can click on Core Synthesis to open that particular book up. Mine's open already, so you don't see anything particular happen there. References is where the books are. This is where you have provings, materia medicas, journals, blah, blah, all the different types of books. You can see a list there. And the book that we're working with is a keynote materia medica. We've looked at this previously, Van Wansel's 149 Medicines Keynotes. So that's where you can access that particular book and any other books that we might move on to later on. And we're not going to look at these today, but patients is where you would go to if you want to record patient details in your particular program, and remedies is where you can go to get into and access information about a specific medicine. That's not our concern today. Today we're entirely going to be concerned with this repertories table of contents, so I'm just going to click and bring that back up. Because we're going to focus exclusively on just the repertory today, I'm actually going to take this table of contents out of the way, and I can do that by taking my mouse down the bottom, and just below the table of contents there's a little button here that says hide the table of contents. So I'm going to click that, I'll take it out of the way, and I'll just let the repertory fill the whole screen. So what you're seeing on the screen here is the repertory itself. It's the front page of the repertory essentially, and as you can tell, it's actually the mind chapter. It's the part of the repertory where all the mental symptoms live. So let's kind of go through and look at a few details of it. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is that there's multiple chapters in the repertory. You can see here the first chapter is mind chapter, and essentially each chapter is a location or a location or a part of the body, with mind being one of the possible locations. So the way that you move around the repertory in this program is you can use your mouse or your arrows on your keyboard and scroll up and down to browse it, exactly as you would with a printed volume of book. But computer version, there's a much better way to do that. Top left hand corner here above, and this is the same for any document that you're in, you'll always see this binoculars kind of symbol, and I'm just going to click that now with my mouse, and you can see this brings up this pop-up window, which is the navigation window, which is the tool that we use to find our way around. And this shows us here each of the chapters in this particular repertory document, and that's what we're just going to focus on for this little part of our presentation. That's all we're worrying about at the moment, is clicking on the repertories table of contents, opening up Core Synthesis, and bringing up by clicking on the binoculars, the chapters section. So this shows you all the different chapters of the repertory, which is also the different locations or parts of the body or systems where we can find symptoms about. So if we go through this a little bit together, this is actually what's called Kentian order. This is based the same Kent who developed Kent's hierarchy, this idea of having PQRS as the most important symptoms, and then the mental symptoms, and then the physical generals, and then the physical particulars, and then the commons at the bottom, that Kentian hierarchy. So same guy who developed the Kentian structure in what was Kent's repertory, which this a contemporary repertory is based on. And so you can see the order here is not alphabetical. If you want to, you can jump into the settings and change the order to show up alphabetically, but this is the homeopathic order. That's what we're going to work with, so you can kind of understand this homeopathic way of thinking a bit better. This is the default setting, so if you've just installed your program, it's going to look like this. So you can see the first chapter, the thing that Kent puts at the front of the book, is the mind chapter. And this is because in his hierarchy, it was the location that was most characteristic. It's the thing that you put at the front. So I always say the story, it's like the front page of the newspaper. You put the biggest news, the stuff people most want to pay attention to at the front of the newspaper. So that's the top of Kent's hierarchy, after PQRS, which could be any location. Then you've got Minds, who puts that at the top. Next most important location in Kent's hierarchy is the physical generals. You remember, the physical generals are things that affect the entire body. They're not confined to any particular location. And so in the repertory, that's the chapter at the back. It's like the sports page at the back of the newspaper, the second most important place to go find stuff. So our two most important locations is the mind chapter at the front and the physical generals chapter at the back. In between that, we have all of our physical particular chapters. These are all the chapters that relate to just one specific part of the body. And they progress in an order which kind of runs from the top of the body, up in the head, and works its way down to the bottom of the body. And so you can see the first particular is the vertigo chapter. This is where all the symptoms about vertigo, all the dizziness symptoms live here. And then we've got the head chapter. It's all the symptoms that relate to the head location of the body. Followed by the eye chapter. It's all our physical symptoms to do with the eye, which is immediately followed by a vision chapter, which is where all the disturbance of the special sense of vision are. So important to remember they're in separate chapters. So if you want to see a lump in the eye, it's under eye, but if you want to see blurred vision, that's under the vision section. Right. Another special sense, the ear chapter comes up next. This is both the external and the internal parts of the ear, again followed by the special sense of hearing chapter, so all your symptoms to do with hearing are going to be here. Then we have our nose chapter, and kind of breaks the rule a little bit. There isn't a separate section for the sense of smell, essentially because there's not really enough symptoms there to make it worthwhile to have a whole separate chapter, so all the smell stuff is actually under the nose chapter. We have the face chapter, all the stuff that happens on the face. It's kind of from the top of the hairline at the top of the head, down to the bottom of the chin at the bottom of the head. Then we have a section for the mouth. It's kind of the you can see there's a line here a little bit between the face, which is the mouth is part of the face, and the actual mouth itself. So all the internal mouth stuff is going to be under the mouth chapter. The external stuff can be on the face chapter. We progress down further. Teeth, inside the mouth, and then the throat. This is the internal throat. Which is then followed by the external throat. So thyroid lumps, for example, an externally visible symptom is going to be in the external throat, where a inflamed larynx, inflamed tonsils, is going to be on the internal throat, basically where you can see it, where you can point to it. After the external throat, we have the neck chapter, and then we move down through the digestive system. So first kind of fork in the road we take goes through the digestive system. So you have the stomach. It's a place where you see all the symptoms related to the stomach. The abdominal chapter. So this is all the stuff that you can experience from the abdomen area. Then we have the rectum chapter, so where you see constipation and diarrhea and things about people moving their bowels, which is separate than the stool chapter, which describes the actual character of the stools. If it's runny, if it's watery, if it's yellow, if it's got food in it, all those sorts of symptoms. Then we go to the urinary system. So we have the bladder itself, the kidneys, prostate, the urethra, then the urine. This is where you'd see, yellow urine, lumps in the urine, flecks in the urine. And then there's a general chapter for urinary organs, which is kind of stuff which doesn't fit everywhere else. It's a bit of a catch-all at the end, actually, for the stuff which doesn't belong elsewhere. Then we have the gender-specific sections. So we have a male chapter, we have a female chapter, We have the male and female genitalia sex chapter, where there's symptoms related to the genitals and sex which are non-gender specific. And we've kind of gone through, so top to bottom, from the head, worked our way down the digestive and the urinary system. Now we jump back up to the top and catch up with the things we've missed. So the larynx and the trachea, so all symptoms to do with people's voices, are in here. Then there's the respiration chapter, all the breathing symptoms are in here. There's a specific cough chapter for a dry cough, a barking cough, a wet whooping kind of a cough, etc. is there. Separate to an expectoration chapter, which is where you can see it's yellow phlegm, it's blood-streaked phlegm, the stuff that people cough up, there's descriptions in here. Then we have a section for the chest, which is everything to do with the organs of the chest, which has not already been covered by other chapters. So, heart symptoms, for example, are under the chest location. Then we have the back chapter, which is dominantly musculoskeletal sort of symptoms of the back. We continue with the musculoskeletal system in extremities. This is where all the arms and the legs kind of symptoms are. Then we have some less physical particular, more getting into physical general symptoms as we get towards the end here. There's a chapter towards the sleep, all the stuff to do with sleep. You fall asleep easily, do you wake up often, how do you get to sleep, what do you feel like when you wake up, all that kind of stuff on the sleep. There's a separate and specific chapter for the dreams, so what are the things you dream about. This has got dream symbols and actual stories that come from people's dreams. If you've got a client who always dreams about snakes, you could look up dreams of snakes in here. And there's a couple of chapters to fevers, and there's actually multiple chapters going on here because you can imagine at the time of Hahnemann and his contemporaries, the most common cause of death was acute infectious diseases, so they paid a lot of attention to these. So our first is the chill chapter. It's where people have got symptoms of chill. So it's a fever, but they're the chilly version where you've got shivers and shakes and rigors and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the actual fever itself chapter, which is where the more warm symptoms are. We have a perspiration chapter, so everything to do with sweating is under here. And then our last physical particular is our most superficial organ, is the skin chapter. And then, as I mentioned before, we finish off at the end with the physical generals, things that are not confined to a particular location. So looking here, you can see these are the different chapters that move across the repertory. So that's 41 chapters here. So each one really talks about this particular location that a symptom occurs in. So if we're thinking about our idea of complete symptoms, we're looking for locations, sensation, modality, concomitant. If you know the location of where a symptom occurs in that analysis strategy, that case-taking strategy, that's also going to tell you the chapter in the repertory that symptom belongs to. So that's all we're doing for the moment. It's this point of our session for today. All we're focusing on is what are the chapters, and what I'd suggest you do is spend a bit of time. Write the list down. Bring this up, click through, write down a bit of paper, try to memorize it a little bit. What are the location options that are available in your repertory, and what order do they go into? Because this is the first thing that you need to know in order to actually start using a repertory. Find your way around it is what chapter are you going to look into for information. And it's pretty simple really in terms of you've got to think just what's the location, but as you get more familiar with the repertory, you'll see there's also some areas where you might think, well, this could be in a couple of different locations. If someone says to you, I really crave cheese, for example, it's the truth of the matter is, cravings for cheese in homeopathy is treated as a physical general symptom because there's multiple different organ systems involved. It's mental stuff, there's blood chemistry, there's a whole bunch of things going on, so that gets put under the general chapter. But you might think to yourself, oh, cheese, it's food, I might look under the stomach, for example. So there's a couple of different locations you could think of. In this case, generals is the correct location. There's a bunch of stuff like that. If someone's got a symptom on their lip, is it going to be under the face? Is it going to be in the mouth section? So as you get used to each chapter, you'll get a better idea of where to go. But for the moment, if you just spend 5 or 10 minutes now, take some time aside, just have a look and say, you know what, I'm going to get familiar with what are the different chapter options in my repertory and what the general order and presentation of them is. Then we're going to come back together and we'll start going through in more detail about what's actually inside the chapters and how to use each of them.